Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a dynamic show. First, let's talk about what's happening with the federal government. We'll discuss the latest around Al-Qaeda, the assassination of Al-Qaeda leader. We'll talk about Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. And we'll talk about the latest with Brittney Griner. With a verdict expected on Friday, we'll be checking in with one of our top foreign analyst, Dr. Gerald Horne, to get the latest. Let's also talk about monkeypox, folks. We check in with Nurse Alice Benjamin to discuss what is this whole situation around monkeypox, what can we expect over the next few weeks, and how do we get to a place of wellness? We'll have that conversation at the 4 o'clock hour. I want to talk about how Airbnb is now under fire and scrutiny as superhosts are now posting bad pictures, are now defrauding people, and we're going to try to get to some understanding of what's happening. So all of that and a whole lot more is going to be taking place on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. I'm very, very excited because we have a number of conversations that we truly believe are relevant to you. And so I want to jump right in. First and foremost, we're going to be checking in with our favorite professor, Dr. Gerald Horne, one of our favorite professors, Dr. Carr. I see you, sir. As we talk about some of the big national issues, national and international issues across this that's happening, as we talk about what's going on with Brittney Griner, the latest about her hearing that was done yesterday, another one is expected to happen tomorrow, and on Friday, her defense team is expecting a verdict in the case of the WNBA star. So we'll discuss the implications of that. Well, let's talk a little bit about Nancy Pelosi deciding to go to Taiwan, even though she was warned not to do so, and what that impact will make and how that will impact the relationship between the U.S. and China. And then let's talk about the killing of Al-Qaeda leader. How is this going to be helpful? Is this going to be helpful or hurtful to the American people, and especially to what's happening with oil distribution around the country? So let's check in now with Dr. Gerald Horne. Dr. Horne, who serves as the professor of history and African American studies at the University of Houston. And we're always happy to have him on to share his insight and analysis. Dr. Horne, good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
It's all good. What about you?
I'm good, brother. I am certainly good. Dr. Horne, let's first kick off this conversation talking about Brittney Griner. Brittney is in a real bad situation. There's a lot of uncertainty around the WNBA star. Russia has not come out and said as of yet whether they will accept the offer that the United States posed to them about trading Brittney Griner and businessman Paul Whelan for the merchant of death, Victor Bout. And so since that decision has not been made as of yet, Dr. Horne, yesterday in her hearing, I know that there was some the prosecutor and both the defense were trying to determine whether the actual substance that she had in her possession, in her bag, was actually in violation. If it contained the THC levels that would violate the Russian drug laws, and it hasn't been determined yet. But I'm wondering, from your vantage point, Doc, there's another hearing tomorrow. They're saying that they're expecting a verdict on Friday. Do you foresee this ending well for Brittney Griner, and that American can seal the deal with Russia?
Well, I would like to think so, but it's difficult to be optimistic right now because recall that after Secretary of State Anthony Blinken floated this idea just about a week or so ago about trading uh, Brittney Griner and another U.S. national for Russian national Victor Bout, who, as you know, was played by Nicolas Cage in a Hollywood movie, that Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, would not take Mr. Blinken's calls for a few days. And
Right.
that is evidentiary of the point that relations between Russia and Washington and the United States are headed towards an all-time low. You know that Congress is pressing the administration and the State Department to designate Russia as a terrorist state. This is in light of this conflagration in the Ukraine, where it was just announced yesterday that the United States is pumping another $500 million in weaponry into Ukraine, which from Russia's point of view will be used to execute Russian soldiers. So in light of that negative diplomatic climate, it's very difficult to be optimistic about the destiny and fate of Brittany Griner, although she should be optimistic in light of the mass support she has received, not only from celebrities like Stephen Curry, the point guard of the Golden State Warriors and basketball peer and counterpart, but also from ordinary people, such as the people in this audience. So all we can do is keep our fingers crossed and hope that she's on the next plane headed west across the Atlantic.
So, to your first point, Doc, that has been my concern that America wants Russia to play ball to do America solid, do America a favor with this prisoner swap, while at the same time, America is not receding its support for Ukraine, or either financially or with any type of military arms. And I'm wondering, as Putin is looking at all of this go down, is he going to just play this out? Because this is still speaking to the leverage that Russia has, right? Like this, Putin knows that this would be a political win in some cases for President Biden and his administration. But he also knows that if America doesn't, come through with this, then he knows that he had put America in a vulnerable position with its own people, particularly with Black folks in this country. So it sounds like a win-win for Russia, and it's like a win-lose situation for us here in America, because this was not considered. And I'm going to keep saying this, Doc. We're talking tough, but then we want to ask the people that we're talking tough to, hey, we're going to just stop talking tough. Do you guys mind if y'all just do this for humanitarian purposes? Can y'all just, how does that play out, in terms of policy? How does that play out on the foreign relationship side?
Well, I think it's a reflection of a larger point. Rather shortly, we'll be talking about the deterioration in relations between China and the United States of America. And from the point of view of Russia, they see the United States as being overextended, that the United States is already getting bogged down in a war in Ukraine. Now the United States is selling wolf tickets to the People's Republic of China. Not on our agenda for today is a discussion of the fact that the nuclear talks between Iran and the United States and other countries, those talks are resuming in Vienna, presumably at the behest of the United States of America. You see U.S. negotiator Robert Malley headed across the Atlantic to Vienna to resume these conversations. And from Russia's point of view, they may perceive that the United States itself sees itself as being overextended, which is why it's now embarking on resuming talks with Iran. And at the same time, what you just said bespeaks another issue. I'm not sure if it's dawned on the North Atlantic nations that they are not able to order the agenda as they have done for so many decades and centuries. That is to say, you have the spectacle of Germany and other European countries on the one hand seeking to weaken, if not overthrow, the Putin regime, but then get upset when the Putin regime does not send them natural gas so that they could keep their fires burning and so people can take hot showers. Just in Hanover, Germany, the other day, the administration announced that people should start taking cold showers. So you have to scratch your head and wonder in befuddlement about nations who feel that on the one hand, they can spit in your eye, and on the other hand, they expect you to give them resources. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It does not make any sense, and that's why I'm concerned. Looking at the case itself, Doc? I mean, you are a lawyer, so looking at this case itself, based upon the evidence, based upon the circumstances, based upon the possible sentence of 10 years in a Russian prison, what's the likelihood do you see that Brittney Griner can come home?
I think that I'm cautiously optimistic, and I say this because you've had a lot of press coverage in the United States that is very supportive of Brittney Griner. Just the other day in the New York Times, you had basketball superstar Kevin Durant and former superstar Sean Kemp of the Seattle Supersonics, the team that's now in Oklahoma City, both saying something that we already knew, which is that professional athletes prefer to use various derivatives of what we might call marijuana or cannabis for pain relief and pain alleviation. They see that as wiser than taking opioids that can lead to addiction. And I think that there is a medical establishment in Moscow that probably concurs with that point of view. The issue now, as noted, is the deterioration in diplomatic relations between Moscow and Washington, which makes it problematic for Moscow to do any favors for Washington. And they see sending Brittney Griner home as doing a favor for Joseph Biden, because they see that as helping him in the midterm congressional elections, particularly with the Black vote, which is becoming increasingly alienated from his administration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will have to see, Doc, how this situation plays out. Again, tomorrow, folks, Thursday, there will be another hearing and a verdict is expected on Friday. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi now, Dr. Horn. She has decided to defy expectations and warnings by making a recent trip to Taiwan. According to her, this trip is an official trip, and this trip angered China, which warns that she's playing with fire. Let me just first share with you folks what she said in the statement. Keenan and Lisa, if we can post this statement from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi as to why she decided to visit Taiwan. She said, "Our congressional delegation's visit to Taiwan honors America's unwavering commitment to supporting Taiwan's vibrant democracy." She said that America's solidarity with the 23 million people of Taiwan is more important today than ever as the world faces a choice between autocracy, and democracy. So she decides to take this very controversial trip. And even though China is saying you shouldn't have gone, and I also read, Dr. Horn, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some people in the Biden administration advised her from not going as well. So what does she gain from this? I mean, pissing off everybody.
Well, you cannot understand this escapade by Speaker Pelosi without an understanding of her congressional district, which covers most of San Francisco. It has one of the largest Asian American populations in any congressional district, over 30%, mostly Chinese American. However, consider that this Chinese American community is not unlike the Cuban American community in South Florida. That is to say, both have fled revolutionary processes, China in 1949, Cuba in 1959, and her constituency basically pressures her, and she willingly accepts the pressure, to make these sorts of overtures to Taiwan, this rebel province that China claims as its own. And now we see the fruits of this escapade because she has now left, But now you see that China is engaging in military drills, military exercises. They surrounded the island. They penetrated Taiwanese airspace. Taiwan, despite its hostility to Beijing, is heavily dependent upon the 1.4 billion Chinese market. And there is a fear and a danger that China will now seek to blockade Taiwanese exports to the mainland. The United States, too, should be concerned because Midwestern farmers make a small fortune from selling soybeans and other commodities to Chinese consumers. There is a fear that that trade may be curtailed. And for the first time in 10 years, the People's Bank of China, which buys US Treasury bills, which helps to keep the United States government afloat, everything from the Pentagon to the post office, those purchases have fallen below $1 trillion. Only recently, they were over 2 trillion and climbing. So if that continues, what that may mean is that in order to continue government programs, everything from aid to education to food stamps, the United States might have to raise taxes instead of borrow from the People's Bank of China. And as you know, the right wing sees raising taxes as something akin to the mark of the devil. So I'm not sure if Nancy Pelosi had her head screwed on tightly when she decided to make this very adventurous trip across the Pacific.
So even if she decided that, for the best interest of my constituents, this needs to be made, do you foresee that she's going to be penalized in any way, either from the Biden administration or from her own constituents?
Well, here's what you need to realize. Nancy Pelosi is 82 years old. This is not her first rodeo when it comes to sticking a finger in the eye of China. Recall that some decades ago, she did the same thing in the heart of the Chinese capital, in Beijing, in Tiananmen Square. Keep in mind as well that if the Republicans reclaim the House, as many expect them to do, she will be stepping down from Congress. And so this may be her final performance, if you'd like. And I should also say that there's a footnote that I need to add, which is that this Nancy Pelosi Chinese American constituency is now, I'm afraid to say, in sharp conflict with the dwindling Black population of San Francisco, which is now about 5%, which is one of the smallest percentages in the United States of America for a major city. Just last night, there was a contestation over a Chinese American school board member who insulted Black parents by saying they're not necessarily interested, or in her estimation, in the education of their children. And of course, many in her constituency, speaking of Nancy Pelosi's Chinese American constituency, have sought to block Black American admission to elite public high schools, such as trying to block admission to elite public universities like UCLA. So this is a mess that Nancy Pelosi has helped to generate. And I hope that before she steps down, she tries to clean up the mess that she's generated.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I hope that is the case as well, Doc, because the last thing we need is now some sort of war with China. You talked about that. You really have talked about that before. And I often, since this story broke, I've been thinking about that myself. I'm like, yep, Dr. Horner's been saying it. The last thing we need is a war or any type of real serious tension with China. And I mean, I really hope, like you said, I don't know what's going through her head, but she better think long and hard, because at this point, you putting America in a very, very precarious position. And you're almost saying, hey, I don't care if we got elections in November. I don't care if this is the same country that is allies with a country that we're trying to get somebody home from. I don't care. I don't care. We got our goods and services from this country, and now they can call for receipts from America. All right, let's take it one more place. Let's talk about this drone strike that was done with Al Qaeda. Now, I thought this was very, very interesting, Dr. Horn, Here's what that was put out by this was put out by NPR News. Take a look at this, folks. In talking about this drone strike, does the killing of al-Zawahiri make Americans safer? It said in a worldwide caution advisory issued Tuesday, the department noted that al-Zawahiri, who serves as an architect of terrorist attacks, including 9/11 and the 2000 USS Cole bombing, had urged his followers to attack the U.S., and that supporters of Al-Qaeda or affiliate organizations may seek to do so in the wake of his death. Current information suggests that terrorist organizations continue to plan terrorist attacks against U.S. interests in multiple regions across the globe. It added, these attacks may employ a wide variety of tactics, including suicide operations, assassinations, kidnappings, hijackings, and bombings. Okay, Dr. Horn, what is going on with this? Why is this all of a sudden a priority for the United States? Why were you even talking about Al-Qaeda at this point?
Well, just to refresh the recollection of your audience, you may recall that Al-Qaeda was accused of executing the bombing of New York City and Washington, D.C., that is to say, the Pentagon just outside of Washington, D.C. on September 11, 2001, with over 3,000 people killed. You know that the families of those victims of 9/11 have yet to forget what happened. They've been picketing, for example, the golf tournament at Mr. Trump's golf club in New Jersey, because Mr. Trump has suggested that he is not clear as to whether the Saudis had a role in 9/11. Now, with regard to Mr. al-Zawahiri, I think that Washington may have overestimated his importance, at least operationally. That is to say that he was more of a kind of spiritual guide for Al-Qaeda. He was not necessarily a hands-on manager. However, he was rather inflammatory in his rhetoric against the United States of America. And once again, your audience needs to realize that this controversy has deep roots. It began in the 1980s, at least, when Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and Mr. al-Zawahiri were on the same side as the United States of America with regard to destabilizing a pro-Moscow government in Afghanistan. If you are familiar with the Rambo movies, you might recall that Sylvester Stallone, in one of the episodes of Rambo, he was co-starring with figures who were glorifying figures like bin Laden and al-Zawahiri. But it's predictable that love went bad after the Soviets were driven out and then collapsed. And then we are told that Al-Qaeda turned on the United States, and therefore you had the bombing of New York and Washington. However, your audience should also know that Al-Qaeda has quite a foothold in Africa. I'm not only referring to their tragic and bloody bombing of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania more than 20 odd years ago, which, by the way, not only killed a number of African nationals, but also Congress voted to compensate U.S. nationals who were killed in those bombings, but not the African nationals. But keep in mind as well that as we speak, there are Al-Qaeda affiliates in places like Somalia, places like Mali. Now, it's not a centralized organization, so saying it's an affiliate does not mean as much as you might think it means. But certainly they use the same tactics. Certainly, I think it would be unwise for the United States, which, as we've noted, is already bogged down in Ukraine. It's starting a fight with China. Now it seems it wants to start another fight or resume another fight with Al-Qaeda.
And you know what, Dr. Horn, I was thinking about that, sir. I was really thinking about that. And I think to myself, like, you know, I can kind of get that type of lack of knowledge, or rather, you know, kind of, you know, I don't know the best word to describe it. I mean, the way the Biden administration is moving, you would think that Joe Biden is a first or second term senator. You know what I mean? Like he just doesn't know. I mean, he has 50 plus years. He's been literally probably in every single element of Congress on all of these different committees, whether it's foreign or domestic. And he would you would think like he would know how to move differently. But it just seems like there is no rhyme or reason. I mean, there's a reason for it from his vantage point, but to the American people, it's like, what are we doing? I mean, what are we doing across the waters? We're starting stuff. We just got home from Afghanistan, and now we got all this other stuff happening with Russia. And it's just like, for the American people, for those who are watching this, and like myself and my watchers and for us, we're just like, wait a minute. Now we're going back to Al Qaeda? It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense also because it's not as if all the problems in the United States have been solved and resolved.
Right.
You see the headlines about evictions going up. You see the headlines about homelessness escalating. So one would think that Mr. Biden would want to tend to his domestic knitting. And then there's another issue too, which I think is going to gather steam in coming weeks. This scandal about the U.S. Secret Service and how they purged texts on January 6th and thereafter. Now it seems that high-level Pentagon chiefs did the same thing. Mr. Biden may want to watch his back, because I'm beginning to suspect, as have many others, that the people who were supposedly guarding him, his Secret Service, not to mention the people who were supposedly guarding this nation, speaking of the Pentagon, have been penetrated by Trumpistas. And this may be the ultimate danger right here at home, as opposed to slaying these dragons abroad, be they in Kabul, Afghanistan, or Kiev, Ukraine, or Moscow, Russia, or Beijing, China.
Wow. And now wow. It's all coming ahead. Oh yeah, Dr. Horn, this is an election year, and could be the year that Democrats lose power in both the House and in the Senate. Wow. This is all happening. Doc, I appreciate you for your analysis and giving us some insight about this. We will certainly bring you back on next week, and let's continue to have these conversations. But I thank you so much, dear brother, for your insight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we move forward, let's have a conversation about monkeypox. There's still a lot of fuzziness around the viral condition as to who it affects and what actually is happening and how do we protect ourselves. So we're going to be checking in with nurse practitioner, Nurse Alice Benjamin, to give us the latest and how we should look at this whole scenario, look at this whole situation. We'll have that conversation. So stay with us. That's coming up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Folks, welcome to the second 30 of the culture here on the Black Star Network. All right, let's have a conversation about these rising cases of monkeypox. Now, if you are not familiar, it's okay. If you're still trying to figure out, well, what exactly is it? How does it affect me? Do I need to get a vaccine for it? All of those questions. And there are still a lot of questions about this viral condition. We can certainly help to try to answer as many of those questions as possible, because the next conversation that we're going to have is with a nurse practitioner. She's been a clinical nurse and has been studying this situation. She's been in the medical field for over 20 years, and she's seen a lot. But one thing she has not seen is this conflation of viral health issues that we've been dealing with over these past few months, going from COVID, now dealing with monkeypox. And it was just shared yesterday that there is a polio case that was revealed in New York. Polio. Wow. We want to welcome to the airwaves of the Black Star Network here on The Culture, Nurse Alice Benjamin. Nurse Alice, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. Hope you and the viewers are too.
We are doing well, considering, Nurse Alice. Considering. That's all I'm gonna say, ma'am. Considering. I don't know where to start in terms of trying to wrap my mind around just some of the medical challenges that we are facing as a people, and of course as a country. You have been studying this. You have patients. You've been in the medical field for over 20 years. You are a clinical nurse on both the individual and the family side. Is this just totally foreign to you in a sense of seeing all of these things happen at the same time?
Okay, so I want to preface this by saying that yes, I am a healthcare provider, but I'm also a consumer of health as well. And I'm a mother, I have a family. And so, yes, all of the things collectively that have been happening, if we look at all of our health issues, we look at women's reproductive health issues and the battle that we've been having with that. We look at COVID, and we're barely getting our head above water when it comes to COVID. We, somewhat are resuming normal activity, but, they're saying infection rates are on the rise, and there's a new vaccine, the Novavax vaccine. So we're hearing a lot about that. The polio case in New York. And then now what's right in front of us that we're hearing a lot of these days is monkeypox. So, and, monkeypox, and let me just also say this, I know we're going to talk about this later, but monkeypox is not a gay man's disease. I want to be very clear about that. When we look at our LGBTQ community, a vulnerable population, women's health issues, vulnerable population. We look at COVID, brown and black people, vulnerable populations. I feel like, all minorities, our health are really under attack, and we have to fight to stay healthy. And that starts with being informed and empowered. So I'm excited to get in today's conversation so we can help the people navigate through what seems like treacherous waters right now, just trying to stay well.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to stay well. So you're saying that monkeypox is not a gay man disease. Now, how do you say that? And then yet there is all of this other talk saying that it's being transmitted between two men who have intimate relations with one another. So break that down for us.
Okay, so monkeypox is a viral disease that stems from the monkeypox virus, which is a kind of a cousin, if you will, to smallpox. And I know that the folks who are greatly impacted, disproportionately impacted right now, are gay and bisexual men who have sex with men. That is the majority of people, but that does not mean that other people can't get it. There was actually a study in the New England Journal of Medicine, and they looked at, I believe it was like 600 cases in various countries from April to May. And yes, about 98% of people who were infected were men. And yes, they did get it from intimate and sexual activity. However, the way that monkeypox is transmitted is not exclusively through sex. And there's nothing genetically different about gay and bisexual men that makes them predisposed to this. The way that monkeypox is transmitted is through contact, physical contact, intimate contact through sex. It could be through hugging, massage. It is contact primarily with the lesions, which have a very high viral load. We also believe that respiratory and saliva can carry a high viral loads of the virus, which is why, really kissing someone, being up in someone's face, exchanging those type of fluids, that is how it is transmitted primarily. Now, I'll say this: it happen with gay men. It doesn't. I mean, although their activity, let me back up. We believe that some of this got to the United States from a super spreader event that happened in Europe, and then people traveled and it found its way to the United States. Now, while it may primarily right now be occurring in that population of people, they have partners, they have friends, they have families, they have children, and that contact, whether it's intimate and sexual, or it's just I'm hugging my mom, I'm hugging Nana, or whatever the case may be, that is an opportunity for it to spread. And in fact, there are women and children who now have contracted monkeypox. So we know that this is not just a gay person's disease. And we got to be mindful, because we saw this in the HIV/AIDS pandemic. And, people labeled it a gay person's disease, didn't pay it much mind, didn't get the attention it needed until it spread to the general population. If we are not careful, if we do not educate ourselves, if we do not empower ourselves, and if we do not all take the precautions for this, we can find ourselves in a similar situation.
So we can't take this situation for granted. We can't act as if, oh no, I'm immune to this because as a man, I don't have sex with another man, so I'm good.
Absolutely. And I've actually heard patients say that, oh, I'm not worried about monkeypox because I'm not gay, I'm not a lesbian, I'm not, all of these things. And I had to explain to them the actual mode of transmission. And when I explain that to them, I mean, even as simple as this, because, I have friends and family members who are part of the LGBTQ community. If I go and, if one of them were to have monkeypox and I were to give them high five, hug them, give them dap, all those things, there is intimate contact there. And even when we look at, let's take the person who perhaps is bisexual, they contract monkeypox. They can have sex with men, they can have sex with women, then it spreads. Then the woman has it. The woman, unbeknownst to her, she has it. She can spread it to other people, to her children, to it's endless. There are so many opportunities to spread this, and we just need to be mindful of that so we can limit that.
So it's more it's an external condition. Yes. Is that yes. What I'm understanding, Doc? Okay, so it's an external condition, and just close contact, intimate contact can lead to its transmission. As we look at that, it just seems like that's super hard to try to protect yourself from. I mean, you use the AIDS, you talk about HIV, you talked about AIDS, and how, I mean, I heard, of course, we had a conversation about this yesterday, but you kind of use the invisible man analogy to say, like, and even with COVID, like we just don't know the full facts of how this thing is going to move, or how it may mutate, or how it may, be spread. I mean, can we make that as something? Can we be honest about that at this point?
Well, yes, let's be honest. So this monkeypox is endemic to Central and Western Africa. And, we did have a small outbreak in 2003, but other than that, we've not dealt with this in the United States. We've just not. So, while the CDC and the public health department say, contact your healthcare provider, we as healthcare providers are real time getting information from the CDC. We are learning about it. We are, studying it. We are trying to keep up with things. So as people come to us for help, we know how to help you. But let's be very clear. I've not been treating this for years and years and years. I'm, unlike a heart attack or a stroke, I got that inside and out. I could say it in my sleep backwards. Even if I was, had a little adult beverage, I got it. But with monkeypox, this is new. So I'm just being honest, because people get frustrated. Like, oh, well, this doctor said this and this person said this, and why all the mixed messages? And I will be honest, I have colleagues who have initially also said, oh, this is a gay person's disease. And it is indeed not. And let me just insert this. We talked about intimate contact. This can also be transmitted through objects, bedding, linen, if you are sharing cups and, there's saliva share there. And I think I mentioned to you yesterday, we've all been to a hotel, right? What I recently learned is that while hotels may change the linens, the bed sheets, they do not always wash those comforters between guests. So, we would hope that
Wait a minute, Don. Hold on, nurse. Hold on.
You could
Hold
listen.
On, Nurse Alice.
You better call your hotel before you go.
Wait a minute, hold on. Time out. You can't drop nothing like that on us, and then be like, all right, so we'll move on to the next point. So in this day and age,
yes.
In this day and age where you can have a viral condition just from touch, just from contact, just from being in a space. Now you learn that hotels may not. So let's start with hotels. Let's not even speak about motels who have limited resources, right? But some of your major hotels don't always change the comforter.
Yes.
They change the sheets, but they don't always change the comforter.
That is indeed true. So even before monkeypox, we can all agree that that's gross. That, I imagine that they changed the whole bedding, but the linen, right, as well as the comforter. But listen, you can go online, you can look this up, you can contact your hotels and ask them. And let me say this, although like what I said before, common sense isn't always common. Although we would think that they would do this, hotels are not hospitals. In the hospital mindset, we are very familiar with infectious diseases and the mode of transmissions. The housekeepers, the general managers of hotels aren't necessarily up to speed all the time when it comes to those things, which is why that, we need education and outreach and to talk about things like that. So consumers can say, look, I need y'all to do this and hold them accountable. But when you are going to your favorite hotel, which, it's summertime, people have traveled, you need to call ahead of time and ask them what are their cleaning practices of their rooms. And I want to say this, it's the lesions. When someone has monkeypox, they generally starts off with flu-like symptoms, then they'll develop usually like a dark spot, it'll become raised, then it'll become fluid filled, then it'll be, scab over, dry up, and new skin will emerge. And then, that's the course of what happens with monkeypox. But it's the rashes, it's those raised bumps that are fluid filled that carry the most viral load. And it's when that fluid gets onto the bedding is what makes the bed sheets a concern with potentially spreading infection. So that's why we're talking about comforters are so, how many times have you gone into a hotel and gone into the sheets and just laid on top of the comforter?
Yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore. You can bring your own sheets.
All right, this will be a great time to get some feedback from our watchers, and folks, post your comments. But many of you are already at this point with the whole situation. All right, King, I see you, brother. Brother King Lee checked in and said, okay, so what the hell am I supposed to freaking do? Walk around in a chemical suit? I am tired of this crap. Nurse Alice. What can we do? At this point, it's like, I've literally talked to people who dealing with COVID. They're like, you know what? If I get it, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like people are just kind of over trying to quote unquote protect themselves. They say, look, I'll wear a mask if necessary, but I'm not going to restrict my movements. I'm not going to be, you have masks, you have face masks, you got face shields, now we're talking about, you could be simply somebody rub up against you in a crowded space and you might transmit something to you. I'm like King Lee, like what are people supposed to do at this point?
So welcome to my world, because in the ER and the ICU, I must gown up, wear masks all the time because I understand the mode of transmission. I understand, right. I get it. You're fatigued, you're tired, you want to get back to normal life, you're tired of the mask, and you feel like you want to I just might be in a bubble. However, I still want to, say, do that if you want to, but then when you end up in my ER and my ICU bed, you're going to sit there and say, man, I wish I would have done this and that. I hear that so much, even with people from other medical conditions, like they've had a heart attack. Oh, I wish I would have, ate healthier, just exercise a little bit more. So people who've come in with COVID, and I've had people who are anti-vaxxers, don't want to wear a mask, like, I don't care, this is made up and blah, 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 blah. They've ended up in my ER, my ICU bed. They're like on oxygen, can't breathe. And they're like, I wish I would have got the vaccine. Give me everything you got. You want all of the interventions and the help post, but an ounce of prevention could have gone such a long way, because I also want to say there is no treatment or cure for monkeypox. It is viral. It must run its course. And all we can do at this moment is to treat your symptoms. And quite honestly, we ain't got much.
So given that, and I'm glad that you brought that point up, if that's the case, if there is something coming from the federal government that says, hey, we have a vaccine that can cure you of monkeypox, that may not be accurate. That may not be true.
So we
as given based upon what the medical with medical professionals like you and others know about monkeypox right now, you cannot be cured of it.
Correct. There is no cure for monkeypox. Now, we do have 2 vaccines that have been FDA approved for smallpox, but in this situation, because monkeypox is kin to smallpox, it's being allowed some compassionate use for that. So we have the Janos vaccine, which is a 2-dose vaccine. You get it, and then come back 4 weeks later, and then there's 2 doses to that. And then there's the ACAM 2000, which is a 1-dose vaccine, but that one we're a little leery about giving unless we absolutely need to, because with that one, they're both live viruses, but with that second one, you actually will develop a small lesion and it's going to go through its course. So we don't necessarily want to give that. So there's 2 vaccines to prevent. And if you are someone who's in high risk, let me just say this, if you're someone who's high risk, meaning you are someone who is gay or bisexual, who has sex with men and have engaged, especially in group activity that may put you at risk, or have more than 2 partners, as the CDC is saying, or feel you've been exposed, you want to right away call your primary health care provider or call your local public health department and ask, where can I go to get this vaccine? We have vaccine clinics popping up left and right. We know that this is a major issue, so we're trying to get a handle on it. Now, that's prevention. Now, once you have symptoms of monkeypox, it's usually self-limiting, but I'll say this, many people have said it's painful. It's extremely uncomfortable, especially depending on where the lesions are, because those lesions can also end up in your throat, your mouth, and actually internally. And so, not a pretty sight to see, and especially not something that feels good at all. But in those situations, we do have antivirals, which we can give you IV, and we also have immunoglobulin that we can give you IV, but those have been reserved for very extreme cases.
Let me ask you this, Nurse Alice, how long can the virus survive on the surface?
That we do not know yet. We do not know yet. We do know that it can survive on inanimate objects because people have tested positive and reported having monkeypox, but they've had no international travel. They've not, they don't identify as someone from the LGBTQ community. And so when tracers have talked to them about what their activities are, it's been determined that, it's happened from an inanimate object. And there was one woman in the United States, they're still fleshing out her story, but she's actually reported getting exposed through money, which is very rare. But I just thought, you're gonna Google it, you're gonna read it. So I figured you might as well hear it from my mouth first. And so, but we're still fleshing out her story. You still have to figure out what other activities this person engages in, who's in their household, other things like that. But she strongly believes that is the only place where she's had her contact, and because of people who've tested positive who've also handled money, apparently. So we're still learning a lot. So let me just say this, we are still learning a lot. You're going to hear lots of unique stories. And until we can catch up, till the scientific community can catch up with data, evidence, all these things, it's going to be something where, I'm not really sure. So let me just take all the precautions I can until I know for certain that I cannot get it from this mode of transmission.
So, and also I think that we need to make this clear. As of right now, based upon the cases, how many people have actually died from monkeypox?
So where it's
Or is
endemic
this
in
something
Western
that you don't, you may not die from? You may not actually, you may catch it, but it doesn't mean that you will, it's a fatal virus condition, right?
Correct. So, in where this is endemic to in Africa, there have been deaths reported that are a very small amount. I was reading one study out of 25,000 people, there was a reported 9 deaths. So it's not
Mm.
something that we anticipate people dying from. So, people might say, okay, well, then that may give people a false sense of security, like, well, I'm not going to worry about it. However,
Mm.
there are different strains of this monkeypox. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to mutate. However, if I, you learn from your past, you apply the lessons learned so you can be better in the future. So taking a page out of COVID's book and taking a page of what has happened in Central and West Africa and other countries, we want to be mindful that although we don't anticipate a mutation of monkeypox, which right now we have the central Central African strain, we want to just be careful because we don't know exactly what's going to happen, because that's how viruses survive. They learn how to mutate in their host,
Right.
because they want to continue living. So right now death is very, very low, low probability of having. But I'll tell you this, if you do get it, extremely painful, uncomfortable. And we didn't even get into the mental aspects of what this does to people, the discrimination, the stigmatization that happens to someone once they have this, because some people out there are just really mean to people. And especially when we look at the LGBTQ community, they're already a marginalized group. And this adds
Yeah.
another layer onto it. And even if
No
you're
doubt.
not someone who identifies that with that group, we believe that the number, which is currently about 6,300 cases in the United States, is underreported, because people don't want to come out forward and say, this is what I have, for being afraid of being labeled and stigmatized for perhaps their lifestyle choices, or for being identified of that community when they are not, so there's lots of layers to this.
So the other part about it also, Nurse Alex, is, and I'm glad that you made that point, that there's the stigmatization, excuse me, around it. But, I still feel like people are going to just be operating out of fear, right? People are still going to just like respond like, oh my God, I got monkeypox. And then it's going to go into a whole different space. How can we have some very realistic and important conversations, honest, truthful conversations about this? That's the first. That's the part one of my question. And then looking at how the United States government and the CDC dealt with the whole COVID-19 pandemic. Should we place our faith that the Biden administration, the CDC, and some of these other medical institutions are going to give us the proper and accurate and one message about monkeypox?
Well, you bring up a good point, because I will say this, the CDC, the federal government, did a horrible job of communicating to the public about COVID, especially when we didn't know as much as they made it seem like we do. We were learning real time. We were gathering data from all over the world.
Tell the damn truth, man.
Yes. So
just tell the truth. If you don't know, just tell the American people. We don't know what the hell we're trying to do. But this is science. This is medicine. We learn and go. Tell the people the truth.
I absolutely agree. And I think that some of the people who, are at those levels of communication, dispersing that type of information, really are not in tune to dealing with vulnerable and marginalized communities, because oftentimes they didn't look like us. They didn't know our struggles. They're like, oh, social distance 6 feet away. Well, I'm a social distance if we live in a two-bedroom apartment, there's 8 of us. I mean, help me understand. So we really need people who look like us, who understand our struggle, to communicate these things, which is why I pride myself on talking to people before they become my patients, because I want you to have that bit of information. And even if I'm not your provider, you can go to whoever your provider is and ask them the hard questions, and just be prepared. They may not know because they don't know our struggle. And that's just fact. So, but when it comes to the monkeypox, I believe the government in many of these states, especially those who've declared public health states of emergency, they've learned from COVID, like, oh, no. Let's nip this in the bud. Let's activate this so we can get resources, manpower, going so we can get vaccine and education outreach going, so we can coordinate better, so we can get more vaccines. So that piece that they're doing better in. At least I'm in California, and California, New York, and Illinois are those states that have done that. So that's a step in the right direction. But now communication and dissemination of this to the public, while delicately not trying to stigmatize the LGBTQ community, is going to be their struggle, because they already fumbled it. They fumbled the ball when they were communicating to the general public. Now, when you're trying to communicate this without singling out this community, because they are not responsible for the spread of monkeypox. I want to say that nobody's at fault. This is a communicable disease that's spread by a virus. The monkeypox virus is at fault for the monkeypox virus. That's right. Clear. That's fact. So I'm hopeful that they will partner up with community organizations, partner up with the LGBTQ community, and then also, allies of that community, to make sure we are disseminating this information in a way that is important and meaningful to everyone. So like I said, I've had people say, oh, this doesn't impact me, I'm not gay. Well, let me read you real quick and tell you how this transmits, and how you shouldn't say those type of things. So it's like a twofer. I'm gonna have to educate you on your etiquette, and then also educate you on how this disease is spread. So I can't say for sure that they're going to get it right the first time, but you got people like me that are here to help, and people like yourselves who are allowing us to talk about this on your platforms is really meaningful.
And the other part about that too, Nurse Alice, is the fact that if you've already taken the COVID vaccine, you already got boosted, and then folks start to say, well, you could take this vaccine to deal with monkeypox, or this vaccine to deal with the polio situation. I mean, it's a lot going into the body. And there are a lot of people in this country that are against this whole idea of constantly being medicated to deal with these like outside, external threats. How do where is the reconciliation of those two forces? People want to, I think, and I'm the same way. I want to be healthy. I want to keep my family healthy, but I don't want a whole bunch of different chemicals coming into my body. And then, as the industry is trying to learn and go, and then my health becomes compromised as a result of it. And then to add on top of that, you got policies where you can't, if you do fall ill, if you do, you become severely sick, you can't go to Pfizer or can't go to any other pharmaceutical companies and say, hey, your product make me sick, because guess what? They're protected. So, it puts us as the American people in a very, very precarious position.
Yes, I understand. And so for people who may not know, for most vaccines that are FDA approved, if we encounter an injury or a reaction, we can generally, notify the manufacturer, and then that begin a process of some type of compensation or trying to make this right. With the vaccines, the COVID vaccines, especially since they were emergency use authorized. However, FDA, actually Pfizer is now FDA approved. So that there may be some changes in that. I'm unsure about that piece, because you actually may be able to come back to Pfizer now. But when it comes to the vaccines, I know it seems like a lot of medicine being injected into someone, especially if you're concerned about what is it really doing to my body. So we've encouraged people, I'd rather you be protected than not. So if that means that you space this out, by all means, space this out. Now, when it comes to someone who is vaccinated and boosted from COVID, so perhaps if you have Pfizer or Moderna, because those two vaccines have a small risk of what we call pericarditis or myocarditis, which is inflammation around the heart. We recommend that you space the vaccine. So if you're going to get a Moderna or a Pfizer vaccine, but then you're going to go get your monkeypox vaccine, we ask that you wait at least 4 weeks in between, so you don't increase your risk of developing the inflammation around your heart. Because one vaccine alone, you have a small risk, but two vaccines together that both have those risks, we ask you to space those out. But I get it. A lot of vaccines, and it seems like they're all coming at you at once. You're a little leery because you don't really understand the science. We don't have long-term data yet. Perfectly reasonable, and it's okay to feel that way. This is where you as a consumer can do your due diligence, do research, talk to your healthcare provider, ask questions. And if you still, and this is how I am. I'm a healthcare provider, but I'm here to empower you so you can make the best decision for yourself. I can't make you do something. You can ask me, Nurse Alice, what would you do? I can tell you what I would do, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's your decision. I'm going to respect your decision. But and even if you choose not to get vaccinated, I'm still going to offer you tips and suggestions on how to keep yourself safe. But if you ask me, Nurse Alice, would you get these vaccines if and which, by the way, even as a healthcare provider right now, I'm not eligible for a monkeypox vaccine, although I might be at risk for it because there's such a limited amount. But if you ask me, Nurse Alice, when the time comes, if you're eligible and you can have access to this vaccine, would you? And my answer is going to be yes.
And it still comes down to you making the best choice using the best intelligence for you and your family. I'm glad that you shared that part, because some people will bring you that doomsday gospel, Nurse Alice, and act as if and act as if you can't think for yourself. Like, oh no, you gotta just empower people.
What happens when you do that? If you really press someone, they're gonna be like, well, what's wrong? What's wrong? Why are you pressing me? Like they're gonna say no, right? You're gonna further push them away. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the information, and I'm gonna let you chill, process it, and then allow you to come up with that yourself, because we're partners in healthcare. Actually, I work for you as a provider. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Nurse Alice Benjamin. Nurse Alice has been working in the field of medical and healthcare for over 23 years. She's a board certified clinical nurse specialist and a family nurse practitioner. She has practiced at such places such as Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and Sharp Memorial Hospital, done extensive research in the area of burn and trauma and emergency medicine. She has done work on the whole COVID-19, and now she is, as you can hear, folks, she's still learning about this monkeypox situation. But I'm happy to know that we have a sister that is giving us some reasonable recommendations on how to move forward. Nurse Alice Benjamin, thank you so much, and we look forward to bringing you back on as we continue this situation.
Thank you for having me. You guys live well, okay? Make good health choices.
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about Airbnb and how superhosts are now under scrutiny for selling people wolf tickets about the places that people are renting, and how there seems to be a trend that is racially motivated superhosts to use slave plantations and other slave sites. So sites where we should call sacred ground as Airbnb Airbnb places. We'll talk about that. So stay with us. That conversation is going to happen as we move forward right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the show. All right, now let's have a conversation about Airbnb. If you're like me, as you're traveling and you're moving around, you know, sometimes the hotel decision, making a decision to be at a hotel, can now consider what Nurse Alice Benjamin shared with us about cleanliness. Man, it's going to have us thinking twice about hotel stays. But if you have been like me, you know, you find that sometimes hotels can be pretty costly. I mean, really, really costly, to be honest. And now a lot of people have decided to use Airbnb, which are pretty much more like apartments and homes, to accommodate their needs. Folks have found that Airbnbs are more amenable to families. You know, they bring you a certain level of comfort when you're traveling. You have more amenities at your disposal. Well, what about when now it seems to be a trend where Airbnb superhosts and hosts are selling us wolf tickets, meaning that they describe this place as being fantastic. They describe this place as being this and having that, and you will be close to this, and all of those things are happening, only for you to find that once you get there, guess what, folks? It is not like what they describe. Here's the situation. This happened to as one superhost was recently exposed by a TikTok user for telling people that that they were going to have access to a state-of-the-art place. Take a look at this, folks. TikTok exposed this Airbnb host for listing slave quarters. Slave quarters as a cozy stay. The spot had a 4.97 rating, folks, and 68 reviews, which were mostly submitted by white people. This was an Airbnb called the Panther Burn Cottage at Belmont Plantation. Man, oh man, the Panther Burn Cottage, excuse me. And there, the superhost there his name was Brad. He listed the cabin as a 2-guest, 1-bed, and private bath stay. Aside from the fancy LCD smart TV, Netflix access, and other modern amenities, the description of the place includes a watered-down account of the history of the location. According to the Post, it read this: this particular structure, the Panther Burn Cabin, is an 1830 slave cabin from the extant Panther Burn Plantation to the south of Belmont. It has also been used as a tenant sharecropper's cabin and a medical office for local farmers and their families. Wait a minute. So we're using slave quarters now as Airbnbs? You mean to tell me that in 2022, the race question, the race conversation has become so crazy that the places where our people were enslaved are now being used as an Airbnb location with Netflix access? I want to bring in my brother Shinedu Wakofor, who is a diversity inclusion specialist and equity specialist, to talk to us about what is really happening and more importantly, the impact on race, the conversation of race as it relates to this issue. Brother Shinedu, I appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Brother Shinedu, what the hell is going on?
I just think this is just another example of America's insatiable lust to capitalize off of trauma. You would not see an Airbnb opening up in Auschwitz or any other place that holds a sacred space in the lives of people. I think this is one of those things that make me think about when African Americans say, can we address the impacts of slavery? This is not what we're talking about. And there seems to be some obsession, some zeal, some urge, some lust for tampering with sacred grounds, places that should not even be stepped upon, which reminds me that America maybe hasn't learned her lesson from, you see America apologizing we see that Pope Francis was recently in, I think, Alberta, Canada, where he apologized to Indigenous people for not only the atrocities that the Catholic Church has accorded to them, but about sacred grounds that were taken. And America makes that same statement as well when it comes to native land. But then you see something like this and ask yourself, is it just lip service? This is very disturbing, and I think it's very telling in many things that we see in modern day America.
Yeah, I mean, it's disturbing and telling, and one of the big things that that I'm concerned with is that now that the history, the pain, the trauma of a people continues to be, like you say, to be capitalized, it continues to be washed over. It continues to be, fodder for amusement. And this is the thing. In this country, we have been having these conversations about critical race theory, right, Sinead? And so many people have been like, oh man, we need to have this stuff in schools. But I'm starting to become more and more convinced, and I don't know about anyone else, but I'm starting to become more and more convinced America doesn't care about history. It doesn't care about what the experiences of a people really are or have been. It doesn't care about that stuff. And I don't know, it's not just, and I mean, we can act as if there is a real sacred space or there is an acknowledgement of people's history. But when you start to see something of this magnitude happening, you ask yourself, like, is it a moot point for us to even have a conversation about, including history? Because it's not just about teaching it. I mean, if you are in America, whether you're white or black, Asian, Latino, if you are in this country, you mean to tell me you don't know anything that you were never taught about the transatlantic slave trade? You were never taught that black people were enslaved in the southern parts and in other parts of this country. You mean to tell me you are just that completely oblivious? It's just hard for me to believe. Or is it just the simple fact that you don't care? You don't care about the history. You don't care about the pain. You don't care about the trauma. You don't care about, desecrating sacred ground and using it for capital means. I'm starting to see people for who they are rather than who I hope for them to be. Talk to me, Sinead.
Yeah, I think education is the least of the worry, because we were educated to understand that Confederate states lost the battle. However, there's still some level of reverence towards Confederacy and that flag, and you see people who carry it. They carry it with so much respect, honor, and valor. It's just a simple thought of America being very choosy, if you will, towards the history that they think is the one that you should care about. Hence the critical race theory conversation. There's parts of our history that America just does not have an interest in respecting. They'll make mentions of Martin Luther King's speeches, but put no actions towards the words he pontificated. And that just has been America. And quoting Martin Luther King's words, he famously said, be true to what you said on paper. America says one thing and clearly does another. I just think this situation is heinous. I'm glad Airbnb is taking the correct steps, I'm hoping, to solve this matter amicably. But get off of Airbnb for a second. An American, a human being, thought that it would be prudent to rent out a slave quarters that were used to treat people like cattle. And we see America make, back to my example of the Confederacy, when we wanted to take statues down within the last 2 or 3 years, you saw so much people make reverence and say, no, there's no way this could happen. But you don't promote the freedom and respect of America if you do one thing on the left and don't follow the other on the right. To me, it speaks highly on the lack of respect that people have for the struggle that Black people made and the enjoyment. I'm sorry, if you ask me, I would conflate this to the enjoyment that white people used to have of watching Black people get lynched. I don't see a difference here.
Brother, I mean, definitely, I definitely get the same vibe, and I think that is the most. That's one of the perfect analogies. It's like, hey, people's pain is you know what I mean, some type of circus act. You know what I mean? Like oh yeah. I mean, when you look at what's actually being said about this Airbnb and some of the reviews that came in, I mean, and I can't tell, Brother Shanadu, whether these are real reviews or they, you know, or not. But some of the reviews from white people say, "Oh, this was memorable. Highly recommend watching the sunset." One review said. Another review said, "Enjoyed everything about our stay. The cottage, the history, the tour, breakfast, all of it was great." And then another review called it a delightful place to step into history. Now, and see, when you're talking about making mockery of a people's pain, one of the most traumatic events in American history. But then you want us to believe that you want us to believe that you're trying to move forward, that you really care. That message get lost in the laughing and the mockery that you make of our experience. That gets lost because guess what? You've shown that you don't care. And the silliness here, to add to that, Brother Shanadu, the silliness is that some Black folks will still try to defend some of this thinking. And I always tell people, like, yeah, white supremacy is such a poisonous philosophy and ideology that it can turn people into almost like beasts. You know what I'm saying? It just makes people other than themselves and exhibit savage thinking and savage behavior that you gloat in the hurt and the pain of another person or another people, that you think is funny that we went through that experience. But then you get all up in your feelings when you hear Black people talk hard about white people. So I just don't understand it. It's hard for me to reconcile, bro. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to, and it's hard for, you know, as a student of history, it's hard for me to be like, well, they just don't know no better. No. I truly believe, and you please, Brother Shanadu, you know, you can definitely check me. In 2022, if you are still exhibiting this level of ignorance about history, it's not because you've never been taught. It's because you choose to be in that space. It's not that you haven't had a chance to learn. You choose to be in that space. That's what I'm getting, bro. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, I've always had this strange concern about, you know, some of these things, and I would be hard pressed, since, you know, the reviews spoke highly on a historical significance. I'd be highly pressed to know how many of these people have came to the Blacks in Wax Museum here in Baltimore, or the Museum of African American History designed by David Ajayi in DC, and how many of them would want to sleep there? because it's one thing to go to a house and say, oh yeah, it's for historical significance. I don't think in those houses, I could be corrected, that they have the graphic explanation of really what took place. But I think I fancy this around how people like to go to a haunted place or a place that has some type of paranormal activity. It's a thrill. And that is very dangerous when you get thrilled by the trauma of other people. And I brought up museums because, again, I want to see who wants to go. If you haven't been, I want to see who wants to go to the basement of the Blacks and Wax Museum and sleep there, of any race. Or better yet, the question is, why are you doing that? There is, let me give you an example. There is Colonial Williamsburg here in the eastern region of the States that is very much known for a lot of American history. I think the Battle of Appomattox was fought not too long from Colonial Williamsburg. And what I find very respectful is they will have places for you to find refuge that are not on those sacred lands. My question is, why do you want to sleep there? What then is your gain? And then you say things about watching the sunset. The people who lived there, who suffered there, they weren't enjoying the sunset. The sun and the moon were their navigational tools to find their ways to freedom. So to trivialize this pain into it's not that big of a deal, it makes me laugh. And if you want to be a student of history, if you are interested of historical significance, may I suggest that for ethnographic research purposes, maybe you move into West Baltimore or on Slauson Avenue, so you can get into current history of what's happening. If you're so interested in knowing the history, let's not always look at what was. Let's go see what is. And if you're really interested, move into those areas. But in those areas, those same people would run out of fear of what could currently befall them. So I call bullshit, first and foremost, that this is just yet another ploy or play in white people's affinity. And Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talked about this, the affinity of white people to be obsessed over Blackness as a sense of a commodity. Right back to how much of the funds of that Airbnb is going back to Black preservation or Black change agent organizations? These are all questions that I'm just curious to know.
All questions. All questions. These are very, very serious questions, Brother Shanadu. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, these are very serious questions. And it's not just about Airbnb, because this is just like I said, that's just a platform that people use. But the level of ignorance underneath all of the Airbnb drama is the fact that, as much as we want to believe, and I generally don't like to talk about certain stories like this, right? I don't like, because the race conversation can become a very circular conversation. We can talk about the craziness that white people, the things that white people say, the things that white people do. We get all riled up, we get all upset and mad, and then what? It becomes like this, like, all right, we get mad, all right, then we calm down, and then, without any radical change to how we are, right? To radical change in our behavior, radical change to policy. So unless we're going to move the needle forward, I think this is important. The reason I brought this particular story up is because of, one, what we're seeing in the level of fraud that is on these spaces, right? That was once used, it's a simple thing. Hey, you want to rent out a space? You can rent out a space. You don't have to go to a hotel. Now it becomes this racial thing. And now we have to have a conversation about the sensitivity of Airbnb hosts of certain places. Now we got to have a conversation about which spaces are off limits to rent. You know what I mean? Like, and people, and this is the poison. I'm going back to this, Brother Sinead. This is why when we have conversations about race, the poison of white supremacy penetrates and oozes in every single aspect of life. All we were simply talking about is renting a place to have when we go on vacation, when we go out of town. Now, as Black folks, we got to look to see if the damn superhost is a racist.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't run away from this. And guess what? It's not on Black people to fix. How can the oppressed be charged with fixing the oppressor? We don't have any power, quote unquote. We got power, but I'm saying you got no. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And we got to get out of the thinking and put it back right on to other white people and say, get your man. You gotta, if you are a good intentioned, conscious white person that you are sick and tired of racism just as much as we're sick and tired of racism, then you better get your man, get your woman. Because we can deal with them, but you may not like the outcome. Mm-hmm. If we deal with them the way we want to deal with them, you may be like, well, you want to slow that thing down. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we this is a different generation. This is a different time. We're not going to keep doing this. I'm not passing this madness and this garbage on to my children, man. Mm-hmm. This thing's got to end. Mm-hmm. I mean, just keep it real. This thing's got to end, Brother Sinead. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not dealing with this. This shit got to end, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We lost too many good Black people to racist acts, to racist policies, to mockery, to racism, mating jokes. This shit has got to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I may, I would even put a charge out there. If folks are so interested in history, like, I would like to see that same energy to push towards critical race theory, to push towards things of that nature, since you are so interested in history, because, you know, in my opinion, history is sometimes forgotten when it pertains to certain people, but it's just, again, and I think a lot of times it's been my experience, I would say, that white people love to get a charge out of Black people. And again, I'm attributing that to what I see when police call a Black person boy, or to when slave masters used to whip the enslaved. It was a charge. It was an excitement. The same way that somebody could write a review like that, that seems so joyous and jovial, it can be directly attributed to their ancestral foolishness that existed in this country and exists in this country. And furthermore, you know, I think about an article written by a Black woman, Deneen Brown, with the Washington Post. I helped her co-author that article, and she was talking about the traumas that people see, that Black people, when we watch a Black body being shot in the street by police, what that does to Black people mentally, and how there's a belief that that experience, is DNA altering, right? Just like they say slavery is. So to see somebody to then go into that space of unhealed trauma and similarly do the same thing. There are Black people that don't even want to step foot on a plantation because the magnitude of what took place is so heavy. But to be white is to have that sense of authority that makes you feel like you can go anywhere. And that is a geopolitical issue. It's not just about racism. It's this idea. It's funny. They told us in Pocahontas, they said, you think you own whatever land you land on. The earth is a dead thing you can claim. White people have this belief that they can go anywhere, that no place is off limits. And for as long as we, unfortunately oppressed, in my opinion, for as long as we make that okay, of course we can't change them, but we must put the emphasis that you can't cross this. There is a reason why you can't rent out a place in Auschwitz, because the folks that went through the Holocaust stand by that this could not happen again, and no one could step foot in this space unless it's out of reverence and reverence alone. I think Black folks, it's not our fault, but it might be time, like you said, that we have to quote unquote check our mans and say that this cannot happen, and that I don't like to instill fear, but fear seems to be the only language that white people understand, that you cannot step here. And if you do, ellipses, ellipses, ellipses.
Facts. All right, let me take a couple of comments because people are checking in on this. Janae, you posted a comment, say Ryan Coogler and Jordan Peele need to make a movie of us enslaving whites, and we can say we just want to play it out and make it a #1 hit. Let's role reverse since they want to know what it was like. I mean, some folks might laugh at that, but you know, that is, and Sinead, you know, like I know, that is one of the top fears, that if we were to reverse, you know, if we were to get into a more powerful position, that we would do unto them as they have done unto us. That's a fear. And I'm not saying for every white person, that's not the case, but I'm saying that because here's why that's a fear. They know, the whole world knows in particular, that in this country, Black people are waking up. Black people are waking up. Now, some of us may not, and I'm saying some of Black folks may not believe that, bro. But the reality is there is a conscience that has emerged on the scene today. And that consciousness is forcing the next generation and some of the elders of this generation to say enough is enough. There is a new consciousness that's present today, and people know it. The world can see it. We are waking up. It may not be based upon your timeline, my timeline, but guess what? God's will be done. I truly believe that. I truly believe that. This ain't racism. This ain't nothing, no hatred of any time. I'm just saying the simple fact that you can't keep a people down and oppressed and ignorant for so long and not expect justice to prevail to where that people that have been oppressed for so long will not wake up from their slumber and not fight against their oppressor. You can't do it. There's no time in history of any people where they were perpetually in a slave relationship and they never woke up. America woke up to its slave place to the British. We can go through all of the other histories of this world. People know that when Black people in America in particular, when we fully say enough is enough, we wake up. That means our brother in Africa is waking up. Our brother and sister in the islands are waking up. Hell, the Black people in Europe are waking up. It's over. It's over. The day of keep making mockery of our pain is over. Let's go. Shalinda, you said they couldn't care less. We're talking about folks that we trained on everything, and they turned around and effed us. Human trafficking, raping our men, women, and children. Yeah. Yeah. David, you checked in and said, look, the slave was a commodity. Now the slave quarter is a commodity. Right. Right. And we should say something about it. Honestly, we need to say something about it. Airbnb, I don't know, and maybe this is the other part of it on a policy side and relates to this particular issue, Brother Sinead. But maybe Airbnb should send out somebody to do an assessment of these properties. It might be too much to do, I don't know. But if you're getting if you're getting, some really, disturbing information about a certain property, or you're getting pictures. I mean, I don't know, Keenan, if you could pull up the picture of what the cabin look like. Just let me know, Keenan, and at least my team. Let me know when you could pull up that picture, and start to look at it and be like, hey, wait a minute, this don't look right. So I don't know. Mike, you checked in. Mike Green, you say, look, there is definitely a difference between a people who built pyramids and a people who built nuclear warheads. Hello. Come on. Mike, thank you, sir. Lana, my sister, you said, but Farajii, it is. We must stop spending. We let all of these companies disrespect us and shop there tomorrow. Support your own. And I ain't talking Byron Allen.
Yeah.
Hey, man, look, man, I'm so blessed because on this platform, we got some of the most conscious people I ever came across in an online space. They know they tired too. My audience is tired. We tired of this shit, man.
Yeah.
All right, Belinda, you checked in. Good, thank you so much, Lana. Belinda, you checked in. Well, we should have known this wasn't creative thought out to share with Black people. Remember our place in the consumer spaces. Yeah. Danita, thank you so much, Belinda. Always good to hear from you. Danita, you checked in and said, I'm so damn heated right now. Well, let me be honest. I'm heated almost every day. I know that's right. I know that's right. I want to, when y'all, and Keenan, at least when y'all get the chance, let's show that space to that Airbnb that this super host Brad put out there. Let's show that when we get a chance, man. But it's sickening. And I'm going back to that same analogy that you said before, Sinead. You said it's so similar to what we saw back in the days when our people were getting lynched and they had pictures. There's a book that I often reference that talk about the thinking. All you got to do is a book full of pictures. One of the most powerful pictorial history books that we have, called Without Sanctuary. And in that book, you just see pictures of how the lynching of Black people in this country was a public event. Public event. Black man or woman hanging from a tree. People gathered around, smiling and laughing, eating food like it's a show. Public spectacle of killing us. So we not dealing with, this is triggering. and in medical terms, this is triggering. You make a mockery of our pain. But then if we were to respond in kind, if we made mockery of your pain, then how would you respond? Then how you would respond? Go ahead, brother. Look at this. Here we go. Look at this, y'all. Look at this. How do you post that and see this?
What's the definition of empathy again? You don't have to experience what I'm experienced to know that it was a bad experience. And I don't see the justification of why they had to sleep there to fill the history. Read, damn it. Do y'all know how to read? Read. Like, you can read. I think words are so powerful that you can read and imagine being in the place. You don't have to. They say books take you on a journey. Just looking at that, even just me seeing that, and I've seen this article a billion times now, but it triggered me. It got me stirred up. And I did want to touch on something that was one of the comments about the Jordan Peele and the film, and the comment about building pyramids rather than nuclear bombs. And I will always say this about Black people. Black people are about protection and not projection. White people have to project. They have to project. When we were building pyramids, it wasn't to destroy anything. But they, white people, have always had to build incredible things as a sense of projection. We can see it in the nation's capital with the obelisk. It's always a level of projection of something, of them explaining that they're greater, better, so on and so forth. So no, if Black people did have the opportunity, we wouldn't do that, because that's not what we do. The Negroid race, okay? When you look at the makeup of the Negroid versus the Caucasoids and the Mongoloids and the Australoids, we were not built, we were not manufactured to act in that way. Human has things that are human nature, but those type of things that white people did, it is exclusive to them. And I don't think in any world would anybody of the Black race be interested in taking up that mantle. I just don't think that.
Absolutely.
There's no equal playing.
Absolutely, bro. There's none. There's none. So as we close out on this part of the discussion, Brother Sinedu, you know, when you're dealing with a circumstance like this, not just on the Airbnb piece, but just also dealing with the attitude about slavery, the mockery of that history. Where do we have those conversations? You know what I mean? Especially if you know, I mean, this story is a national story. So how do we have those conversations with coworkers, with neighbors? Like, you know, do you recommend that we don't have these conversations in those one-on-one circumstances, and we look at it as a group circumstance? How do we take this, not just stay in a space of anger, but move it in a space of progress and some, hopefully leading to some solution?
Well, I think it's important to have the conversations, period. And I think it's important to express what pains you before you're pained. And I think that's why, for me, I would want to have a conversation with coworkers about, hey, have you, just like we'll say, hey, the new Beyonce album, or hey, the new Harry Styles album. Hey, have y'all heard about this article? What is your take? Because I'm not going to teach you. What is your take? I need to hear what you know first. What do you think about this? Does this make you upset? Does this make you, okay, now I've heard what it makes you feel. What then are you going to do? Because then that tells me where, because I don't need to now bring out my quote unquote anger, disdain. I already know how I feel. It's very important that I know how you feel, because that tells me how I need to move forward with you. And, you know, conversations about race and respect will go on forever, and sovereignty about what is and what isn't. We see that with Nancy Pelosi arriving in Taiwan. That's a whole nother conversation. But the parallel is, we have to have this conversation of, why can't white people be told that they can't do something without them getting offended? There is all this talk about military spaces, Area 51, don't go there, caution, be out. You never see in them horror movies Black people running up in them places, but you see them white folk always interested in discovery of what has already been discovered, right? Because that's how we got here, discovering of new land that already had people inhabiting it. That's a whole other story. But it's important that we do have these conversations, and unfortunately, fortunately, we have to listen to the response. I don't think it's important that we always lead, because if we always lead, we're creating the narrative. I need to hear what the hell you think, because if I know what you think, I know better how to move around you, and more importantly, move away from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, look, we're going to, you know, I think this could potentially trigger some more conversations. And I'm glad that, you know, one of the TikTok users decided to put this Airbnb superhost on blast. But my greatest concern is that this will become a trend, Brother Sinedu, where our sacred spaces are now used as a hotel, Like, I hope it doesn't become a trend, but in times and the days that we live in right now, you can't get past anything on anybody. So, I just really hope that Airbnb does this due diligence and do us justice to not allow these things to happen. And we'll certainly keep folks posted about it. We got to take a quick pause as we move forward. I just got to share with you just something that I came across today that you may not have known about the credit system and Equifax. So stay tuned for that part of the conversation right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, for our final conversation today, I wanted to it's more of a public service announcement more than anything else. If you have noticed, if you have tried to make a major purchase recently, or if you even just checked your credit score, you may have noticed there has been a change, especially if you use Equifax. They have put out an announcement just today saying that they have incorrectly made due to a technical glitch, incorrect credit scores for millions of consumers based upon the scores are not accurate because of a technology snafu. Take a look at this, folks, really quickly. I want to share with you what Equifax is doing. Wrong credit scores for millions of U.S. consumers. This was something that was reported by CNN. And CNN, in their report, that says, quote, credit giant Equifax sent lenders incorrect credit scores for millions of consumers this spring in a technology snafu with major real-world impact. In certain cases, the errors were significant enough. The differential was at least 25 points for around 300,000 consumers that some would-be borrowers may have been wrongly denied credit, the company said in a statement. The problem occurred because of a coding issue when making a change to one of the Equifax servers, according to the company, which said the issue was in place over a period of a few weeks and resulted in the potential miscalculation of credit scores. Now, while Equifax did not specify dates or figures, a June 1st alert from housing agency Freddie Mac to its clients said Equifax told the agency that about 12% of all credit scores released from March 17th to April 6th may have been incorrect. Now, Equifax wrote that there was no shift in the vast majority of scores and that credit reports were not affected, but the company declined to comment to CNN Business about how people can learn whether they were among those whose credit scores were incorrectly reported and what recourse they may have if they were issued loans at a higher rate or denied a loan outright because of the snafu. Wow. Wow. And let me just share this with y'all. Look, I'm at this point that the credit rating system in this country is so skewed and distorted to me. Because a lot of people say you got to have a 650, you got to have a 700, you got a 720, you got to have an 820, and all of that stuff, right? But that does not guarantee whether a person is going to pay for their home, they're going to pay for their car. On paper they look like it, but we know the economic setup of this country. And I want to bring my brother Shanadu back into this very quickly. Brother Shanadu, we know that the economic situation in this country is so messed up. It's interesting. Here's the irony of this situation. The irony is that Black folks, brown folks, and a lot of Americans, and even white people, everybody can be made to feel bad or being denied about their credit. But if you look at the credit of the United States of America as a country, as a government, guess what? Our credit ain't that strong either to the creditors and the debtors that we owe. So it's just the ironic part about it. Talk to us about what you think of this technological snafu of Equifax, brother.
So we learned a lot about technology when I was in school to become a project manager, but I find something interesting about this story. We all know that technology makes mistakes, right? But in the same week where you talk about a credit score snafu, America also touted the killing of al-Zawahiri, an al-Qaeda leader in a whole nother land, far, far, far from here, right? But more importantly, that the technology was so precise that it was able to kill him, A, without anybody knowing, and B, without any other casualties. These are just two examples of how tech works, right? So, or doesn't work. My issue with this statement is when you're doing a migration system, when you're migrating one system to another, this is what they taught us. I could be wrong. You're supposed to build in redundancies to prevent this from happening. It actually costs a little bit more money, but it saves you from having this embarrassment. And the only reason why I think that there's something insidious about this is why not release the data of who was affected? Because I'm sure that the diversity information that probably coincides with the data of how many people were attacked might show a different story. So again, for me, I call bullshit, and I'm not buying this. Not Equifax, not one of the biggest credit rating companies in the country. It's no way. And to your point about our country and credit, I mean, we don't make those mistakes when we're borrowing, as in borrowing as a nation. That mistakes just never seems to happen. Technology doesn't just choose that I'm going to F up for you and work for you. It doesn't work that way. So somebody needs to do more research, because something seems a little white about this issue.
I don't know. But you know what? Here's the thing why I think that it's important that we brought this up, because so many people are hindered, and credit score serves. I mean, some people got great credit, but a lot of people don't, right? Like people are really hurt because of everything from COVID to job loss to all of the things that we often talk about on this show, the issues. And this credit scoring system is this system that says, pretty much, you're better, you can make your bills on time and all of those things, so therefore you're rewarded. But it doesn't accurately measure whether a person is, is undergoing some sort of life-changing experience, medical bills, college, student loans and debt. When you're talking about death in the family, divorce, I mean, as much as, and I've seen it recently, and I feel like, they keep talking about, Brother Shanadu, we're in this pandemic, but the corporations that run this country, they becoming more strict on consumers, right? Whether you want to rent a rent property, whether you want to buy something. I mean, there seems to be this blowback from the corporate side that, as a result of COVID and the moratoriums on not evicting people and all of these policies, we're going to make it actually harder for people to get into new vehicles or a home or to rent a place. I mean, the credit system you could work all your life thinking you're going to boost your credit. And then guess what? It's like you're a hamster in a wheel. And the crazy part is, just have one life-changing event, and your credit score can go from great to gravy in a one fell swoop, right? You know what I mean? And guess what? The system does not, the best word I can say, the system does not forgive you. You lose your job, your credit goes down. Your death in the family, your credit goes down. You go back to school to try to learn more skills so you can be a greater contributor to society. Student loans, student debt, your credit goes down. You get into an accident at a time, and you laying up in the hospital, and at a time where you are suffering pain, at a time you're trying to figure things out, guess what? Your credit is going down. It's a penalty. It's a penalty system. It doesn't reward you. It's a penalty system. And there has to be some new conversation. There really does have to be some conversation about the credit system, and more importantly, some conversation about making sure that there are avenues by which working people in this country, you and I and so many others, working people in this country, can move further along.
Yeah, and there has to be, in my opinion, some type of equal penalty for things that go on in the quote unquote, I'll say quote unquote, right, mistakes that corporations make, right? We all remember what happened in 2008. The banks effed up, and they effed up on purpose. And you know what happened? The government took out a loan on their behalf and paid them, what was it, $100-something billion or whatever. But like you just said, when we as individuals go in through specific life-changing experiences, there is no grace, there is no pity, there is, oh well, da, 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 da. And
right.
That's my general issue here. Okay, let's say it was a technology snafu. What are the repercussions? Who's getting fired? Who's getting let go? What team is being scrubbed and scraped? Are you going to now make the mistake? And because you know it's funny, they never make the mistake to up people's credit or make the mistake to get rid of people's student loans. Those are the mistakes that never happen. But somehow technology seems to make this calculated decimal error to always add and never subtract. I just find that very, very interesting.
All right, let's take a couple of comments as we close out on today's show. Let me hear from my brother King Lee, checking all the way in from Germany. King, you said my credit scores are all rated either good and excellent with all 3 U.S. credit rating bureaus. Here in Germany, there's a credit rating bureau called Schufa. I am excellent in that bureau. My man. And I know you are full rewards for being in that place, brother. I'm telling you, you know it and I know it, that this thing is unforgiving. Thank you, brother King Lee. Good to hear from you again. Taylor, you checked in and said technology ain't magic. It does what people tell it to do. As a computer programmer, I tested everything to exhaustion, then had someone else test it. Craziness. And guess what? A simple miscoded, a simple code, the simple wrong code can throw off a whole system. And now we got this situation. Taylor, it does not make sense. Thank you for checking in. Zoe Bing, good to hear from you, sis. You say, trust me, Farajii, the banks know everything down to your diet habits. Facts. They have risk assessment that looks at your purchasing trends across all accounts, not just accounts you have with them. Right. Places, simple things that you remember back in the day, you could rent things. They'd say, all right, well, let's look. Do you have a job? Good. How long you been there? Good. Now jokers want your bank statements. They want to know where you purchase your food at, right? What you do with your leisure money. They always say, no. We're not looking at this. We're just simply looking at that. And then they come back and deny you a loan for business, deny you a personal loan to do some renovations on your house, or deny you a loan so you can go to school or something. And you're like, well, why are you denying me? We found that your debt ratio is higher. Well, how did you know that? Because you looked through my personal, you asked me for my documents, and then you look through all of my documents and you say, this person can't possibly afford a payment. And you made an assumption. And this is something, Brother Sinedu, I always wondered to myself, brother, like if I'm trying to apply for a place to live, right? You you buying a place or you want to rent a place. What are the odds that I just want to default on the loan? Here's the place that I put my head at night. Do you think I want to F that up? Wouldn't that be my priority? Like, I'm going to go through all of this just to default on my loan. There must have been a reason. But like you said, there's no forgiveness. Instead, you become what? You become a liability to the banks. You become a liability to the lenders. And now you are branded that until your financial situation improves. And that may take time. It takes all this time. And then here's a real quick thing as we close out, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this, Brother Shanadu. All this time, right? And as Black people, we've had to deal with credit because guess what? I mean, depending on who your parents are, depending on the environment you grew up in, financial literacy wasn't emphasized in the streets, in the community. You didn't know about that. I didn't know about that. We had to deal with the fact that some of us got bills in our names when we were 16 years old. We couldn't vote, but you got a BG&E bill, you got a power bill, you got a car note in your name or something crazy, right? But financial literacy. You didn't take care of the fact that some of us were not taught that. And I understand the need for us to have those conversations, the need for us to have those trainings. But there's no forgiveness. They say loan forgiveness. But is it really loan forgiveness? Because I'm trying to make myself better and then go out into the workforce to make somebody else better. So they use the term forgiveness like you violated somebody, like you hurt somebody just because you wanted to go to school. So we're going to forgive you on your loan. Forgive me? Damn. All I wanted to do was go to school, and I violated you. That has to change, brother. Go ahead. You got the final word, Brother Shanadu.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, my biggest issue with credit is it creates this social chasm that somebody is better than the other. It creates this privileged mindset. And we've all been there one way or another. I'm gonna give a little quick example. I have global entry. So when I come back in from the country, I don't have to wait in the long immigration line like everybody else. I go to the machine, takes a picture in 2 seconds and knows who I am, prints it out. I'm walking through while everybody's waiting. And the last time I did that, I noticed something. I noticed that dopamine was being released in me. I noticed that I felt better than those who just A, didn't know, or B, just don't have that. And I feel like credit does that too. Credit creates this false, because I could walk through that airport and get ahead of you, but that don't mean that I'm any better. I could still have a shitty life, bad credit, but I just have that. And I think credit does that too. You see somebody walking around maybe with an 850, 830, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, I have better credit to get this, that, and the third. But do you have the same access to life skills, to education, to housing, to loans? Because that's another thing. There are people with great credit that still can't get nothing, because when you go looking for things, they say, we want to see your credit and your education and your housing. So you can get an A here. We learned this in school. You can get a 3 credit A or 2 credit A in this class. But if you get a 4 credit C, your average is now a C.
That's what it is, brother. That's what it is. Hey, Brother Shanadu, my guy, our time has been very well spent, brother, and I truly, truly appreciate you. Thank you so much for the great conversation, as always, and your analysis is on point, brother. So we thank you so much for being so good for the culture today.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Folks, I hope that information is something that you can hold on to. I just want to let you know. So if you reach out to try to get a loan, if you're trying to make some moves and you check your credit score, you found out to be a little sketchy, then definitely check it out. Call Equifax, and you may be the ones affected by that technological snafu. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today. Very, very dynamic show. I want to thank our very special guest, Dr. Gerald Horn, and I certainly want to thank Nurse Alice Benjamin, and I want to thank my culture crew member, Sinead Wakwafor. And of course, no conversation is complete without you. So thank you for tuning in today. Make sure you can continue to support us here at Black Star Network. Go to blackstarnetwork.com. Support the Black Star Network financially. Support us with your shares. Support us with your downloads. That is exactly what we need as we continue to do the great work of building a strong Black media institution. All right, big things that you should be checking out for. One is, if you did not know, Brother Roland is rolling as he is continuing to put out great content. He spoke today from Florida, from the 7th to 75th National Association of Real Estate Agents, the Realtors Association. So dynamic a speech that he gave today to talk about real estate and talking about money, credit issues, and so much more. Make sure y'all check out that content that is on Black Star Network and on all of our platforms of YouTube and Facebook. Make sure you just check that out. Also, folks, we got again pushing out a lot of new shows. The Pivot is now streaming live. Make sure y'all check that out as well. Balanced Life is now streaming. Check that out as well. Just go check us out at Black Star Network. If you go to our website, you go to Brother Roland Martin's YouTube page, you go to the Facebook page, all of that will continue to be streamed, but you don't want to miss. We are producing great content that is so important for us right now. And then the final thing is, Brother Roland talked about it, with 24-hour streaming is coming in the fourth quarter, so get ready for that. Can you imagine that? That's right, Black Star Network is going to be 24 hours of streaming. Major undertaking. So big shout out to all of our team, my man King Keenan, and so many that are working behind the scenes. Least welcome. All of them who are doing the great work of making sure that content is always out there for you to consume. So lots happening with Black Star Network, and we thank you for your continued support. That's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for Big Brother Roland Martin. Check it in with Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. And as always for me, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.